that it would mitigate the emissions.
No. You asked about an investment.
Welcome to Moose and Loose Extra, my extra channel. Be sure to subscribe here. Today what we've got is Jonathan Wilkinson and Vasi Capello's essentially getting into an argument over his involvement or lack of involvement in energy projects in Canada. And Vasi just keeps grilling him and he keeps doubling down. This back and forth argument is hilarious to watch. Let's jump into this. So next up here on CTV, we got Jonathan Wilkinson here who gets absolutely destroyed by Vasi Capello's.
Why did it take a crisis of this magnitude to get you and your cabinet colleagues talking like that about reflecting on the need to further expand our capacity to hit other markets?
Well, look, I mean, we have been expanding our capacity to hit other markets. Our country actually is perhaps the only G7 country that has free trade agreements with virtually all of the other advanced economies. But I would say that it's a bit unfair, I think, sometimes for folks to say things like that. The first free trade agreement was signed in 1988 by Prime Minister Mulroney, and we've gone through decades of periods of time where there was a political consensus in Canada that working with the United States was a good idea because they were a reliable and trusted partner. We're now dealing with a president that obviously behaves differently than the presidents that came before him, and it behooves us all to reflect on what we need to do to ensure that we actually are not as vulnerable as perhaps we have found ourselves to be.
Behooved? Really? Come on, man. Just wait. This interview escalates quickly.
But my goodness, I mean, this president is very different from every president that came before. And the partnership has been a strong and a useful one for Canada.
And I certainly understand that point. And I think that's true of a lot of Canadians, right? That we sort of relied and thought that would be a stable relationship for a long time. But your government isn't supposed to be just the rest of us living our daily lives. You're supposed to be thinking about the future. And with great respect, like I've interviewed you a number of times. I don't think anyone would describe you as a champion for building infrastructure to get our product to other markets. Even TMX, the one thing your government spent a ton of money on, did invest to do exactly that, barely a peep when it opened.
Look at his face. This guy doesn't like that answer at all.
Up. It was difficult to get an interview with anyone to publicize that fact. I think of LNG, for example, and the interviews we've done on that. A quote from you just a number of months ago: the government is opposed to using government money to fund inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. We're the first country in the world to actually do that. We are not interested in investing in LNG facilities. Now it appears that you and your government have had a big change of heart. Why should Canadians trust that? Are you actually genuine about it?
With due respect, Vashti, a number of the things you said there are actually just not true. Certainly, I did champion the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and it actually does exit just adjacent to my riding. So it was certainly something that I worked very hard to explain to British Columbians. In terms of LNG, I mean, we have been supportive of LNG. The LNG Canada 1 is going to be starting up very soon. Wood fiber is being built. Cedar is very...
Oh, please. It's been 10 years. You guys have done nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Close to moving ahead. We are having active conversations on LNG Canada too. Those all have been important things. That doesn't mean that in the context of building fossil fuel infrastructure, you get to conveniently forget about climate. You have to do this in a manner that is consistent with Canada doing its part with respect to climate change.
Why? Answer why. Why do we have to do that when China and India and everywhere else is not doing that? Why do we have to suffer for your climate agenda? No, get out of our government.
At the end of the day, climate doesn't just magically go away. You have to do these things together. And I have been very long.
At the end of the day, you guys just don't magically go away. We're going to have to do this together.
Champion for doing that. And I think if you ask folks in the oil and gas sector, they would tell you that.
But you're framing it as someone who's asking you about what your government's position is on getting extra capacity to other markets. You're a climate change denier. I don't think that entered into my question at all. I don't know if people across this country, I certainly have never interviewed anyone out of Alberta or Saskatchewan who has the view that your government was a champion of projects like that. TMX, sure, but there's a whole bunch of other ones. I just read a direct quote to you in which you told me there's no way that there's going to be government investment in phase. That was a question about phase 2.
Yeah, but Vashti, let's be clear here. I mean, governments typically are not investors in projects. That is the private sector. But governments can facilitate through the work that they do with respect to regulatory and permitting issues and everything else. And this...
Yeah, and you guys have blocked everything, including nuclear power. Yet their first nuclear plant, I didn't cover it. It was about a week or two ago. It's in Poland. Trudeau went over to Poland to do financing for a nuclear plant over there. They've built 0 nuclear plants in 10 years, yet the first one is going to be in Poland. Unbelievable.
Government, and certainly I, have been very strong advocating for the simplification of regulatory and permitting issues, the work with the provinces to try to better align those things so that these can get built expeditiously. But we are not a state-run country, actually. The federal government doesn't actually take control.
That wasn't about taking control.
Investments with respect to various production.
It was about
facilities.
incentivizing electrification.
It was a very specific case. It was a very specific case because of the political risks that were put into play by Premier Horgan.
But this wasn't a question about whether or not you're going to fund an LNG facility. I take your point on that, most definitely. It was a question about whether you would incentivize.
No, that's what you said was an investment.
Yes, because I had asked you if you would provide any incentives for that phase two to be electrified, so that it would mitigate the emissions.
No. You asked about an investment in the facility. We certainly have been and have been working actively on the North Coast transmission line, which could be actually a way to electrify LNG Canada too, but also to actually open up a whole range of other things, including critical minerals mines. That's been ongoing, and that discussion's been ongoing for some time.
So you'd be willing, for example, for the government to play a role in electrification?
Yes, and we've said that, and we're actually working with the government of British Columbia on that right now.
And so what?
You guys are not working on anything. You guys don't get anything done. Like, we don't buy this. We see what you're doing. You send our money overseas. You don't spend anything around here, whether it's down in Africa or up in Poland. And now you guys don't have any more money. Where's your budget? You have to bring back Parliament. You're going to get voted out. Not for the charade. It's over and done with.
What does that mean for the future of projects like that? And is there any discernment between, in your view, the way that you would have positioned the government 2 years ago, for example, on things like this, and now vis-a-vis Donald Trump?
Well, I would say that there is greater emphasis on trying to ensure that there is diversity on a go-forward basis, because our American friends have not been very friendly lately. And while we may get through these tariffs, I think they have fundamentally affected the psychology of Canadians in terms of the level of trust that we are going to have, that they are always going to be there as our friends and our allies in the.
Now, Canadians don't trust you guys. You talk about diversification. You guys dump so much money into all these EV projects that are all just crash and burning. So I did a search earlier. We got Volkswagen, $14 billion 2023. We got Stellantis, $5 billion. That's moving down to Detroit. We've got $7 billion for Northvolt. Ford for $1.2 billion. General Motors, $600 million. These are all EV related. Volta Energy Solutions, $150 million. Goodyear, $575 million. Hydro One Limited, $4.95 million. Development and pilot of a heavy-duty electric truck. Toronto Transit Commission, $2.5 million. Opus One Solutions, $2 million. Electra, $1.32 million. Geotab, $1.3 million. Blackstone Energy Services, $635,000. There's also Lion Electric, I believe $600 million, not on this list here, but I'm not saying all those projects are bad, but a lot of those projects are going under. They're switching back over to making gas vehicles again, or shutting down production, or moving it to the States. Like, that investment, that $52 billion is not panning out. They dumped everything into that, and Canadians are left holding the bag. These ministers are absolutely insufferable. Props to Vasi for being so calm with them. They keep acting as if they're still going to be in power. Like, they know the gig is up here. Like, enough is enough, guys. Just call the election and be done with this pain. They're just squeezing us just month after month, just dragging this out. Just be done with it. This guy Wilkinson is useless in debates. Daniel Smith did all the legwork to negotiate with Trump. He did nothing. This liberal guy, liar written all over his face. Jonathan, the climate crisis Wilkinson, get lost. We need an election. There you have it. I don't think Jonathan Wilkinson won that argument. Not at all. Vasi came with the receipts. He'll believe whatever is in his mind. I mean, it's like all these liberals. They make up a fantasy world that they want to live in. It's really quite appalling, because I think Wilkinson actually believes that putting Canadians through all this suffering that Justin Trudeau and him and Guilbeault and all of them have done over the past 9 years was worth it. It's justified, and it's really quite sick. Meanwhile, there's no talk of China. There's no talk of India. There's no talk of any other countries. Canada has to be the one that suffers. The Canadian people are the ones who have to bear the burden of their terrible mistakes.